This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. Haley Buick GMC, the place for a new Verano or Terrain Denali, in Richmond and online at haleybuickgmc.com. Everywhere there are lighting poles, there's one more opportunity to save money. Intelligent Illuminations provides cost-effective wireless lighting solutions for roadway or area outdoor lights. Kanawha Valley Arena, Virginia's cowboy town, hosting an array of events from Civil War reenactments to diesel truck pulls. More information online at virginiarodeo.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. So what do you do? Information about getting involved in advanced technology careers, making everything from clean energy to life-saving medicine, is available at dreamit.doitvirginia.com. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and a very special welcome to two persons who work with legislators here at the Capitol, and we're going to have some conversation and help our viewers better understand what they need to do if they're trying to contact their senator or their delegate. Jennifer Boyd, who works with Senator Phil Puckett, Marty Hall, works with Delegate Morefield. So thank both of you for being on This Week in Richmond. Marty, you've been on before, and so we'll start with you and then get with Jennifer, and then if one of you says something, the other one wants to chime in, just feel free to ignore me. And what's the first thing that you would tell people if they're trying to contact your delegate or one of the other 99 members of the House of Delegates?
Good luck. But no, besides that, I think email is the best way to do it, because I know in our office, we can receive the emails on our office computer plus our mobile units that we have, our iPhones and things like that. So between the delegate and myself, we read all the emails that come in, and we can get a faster response back. If you send something by mail, it takes a little longer. But if you send an email, always try to put your phone number, and we usually give you a call back.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer, what would be your starting comment?
I would always suggest the email as well. Our administrative assistant answers the phone for us here in Richmond in our office now, and we don't always get that direct call into myself or the senator. So if they email, one of the two of us are going to check the email and be able to respond to them pretty quickly.
You know, one thing that I tell people, and I'll see what you all think about it, that when they're sending emails, is to very quickly in the email indicate that they're a constituent.
Yes.
Because sometimes there are emails that some organization is trying to get people to email every legislator, and you get them from outside the district, and I doubt if those make the same impact as the ones that come from your districts.
Well, what we always do is scan through all the emails and look at them. If it has a local address where it's a person in our district, we always double take that and do what we can. If it's someone outside the district, they don't get the service the people in our district do, but we try to do all we can for them. And between Jennifer and myself, we call each other like once a day and discuss different things. And sometimes it's things that her office can help us with, and some things our office can help her with. So we work very good together, and between Senator Puckett and Delegate Morefield, we try to get the job done.
Mm-hmm. Because your districts do overlap. Your Senate district includes most, if not all, of the House district, doesn't it?
It does. It includes all of Delegate Morefield's House district, And our district stems from the city of Radford all the way west to just a little past Big Stone Gap. So we have one of the largest, we have the largest district area-wise in the Senate. So we do work well together and try to, take care of all of our constituent needs.
One of the great advantages to our viewers of having the two of you on is because you do have districts that overlap, the House district that's in the Senate. And I think you'd find that with other legislative assistants and chief of staffs too, that they work with someone in the other chamber.
Right, and it's good. Senator Puckett and Delegate Morefield have a good working relationship, and I think in both of our districts we work for the betterment of the people, not so much party lines.
Yeah, the campaigns are the party time.
Right.
And then it's the governing time.
Right, and we like the legislative part, I think,
Yeah.
the best.
Yes. Blue Ridge PBS has offered to viewers, and I'd remind them if they haven't gotten one, if they'd like one of these directories, if they'll just send an email to TWIR at capitalsquare.com, that's like This Week in Richmond, then on behalf of Blue Ridge PBS, then they get a copy of it, and it has the contact information that they would need.
Very handy book. You make sure each one of our offices get so many, and we usually give them out very fast because it's got so much information in it.
So beyond emails, what about when people are coming up to visit? Should they try to get an appointment beforehand, or should they? What do you find that works best in the Senate? And then I'll ask Marty the same over in the House.
I do. If they can contact us as soon as they know that they're coming to Richmond, if they have a time frame, that's available for Senator Puckett, we're more than happy to try to schedule an appointment to see him. Usually we do it in 15-minute increments because there's such an overwhelming number of people trying to get in to see him. And if he's not available, I will talk with the lobbyist or constituents myself and address the situation, and then we have a meeting in our office usually a couple times a week, the senator and I do, to try to resolve whatever the issue might be.
Yeah, it's the same way in our office, and we've met a lot of times at night with people who come down during the day and everything's busy and the delegates in session, and I'm meeting with people and we can't get with them, we'll meet with them at night. We try to convenience them as much as we can.
Yeah, I think that those who come from a great distance, and they certainly do if they're coming to see your delegate, your senator, and even ones who come from a much shorter distance, even here in the city of Richmond, need to understand just how busy the legislators are during the session and how challenging it is to get 15 minutes is like a lifetime to get that much time.
Sure is.
So what else would you say? Do people still write letters?
They do. I actually picked the mail up on Saturday before I traveled up to our office and opened it today, and I had a couple of different constituent letters in there. And we respond to those letters with a letter back, or certainly at least a phone call, to acknowledge that we'd received it and we're working on the problems and the issues.
Yeah, we do still get letters. It's a lot of people in the district that do not have email that will write letters. It delays the process because we have to, if we have a question, we have to write them back, where if they call or send an email with a phone number, we can get straight back to them.
So what else would you like to tell the viewers? What's something else?
Well, as for Delegate Morefield, he's a young delegate, but he's got a lot of experience in business, and he cares about people, and he does the best he can to make sure the people of his district get water, sewage, basic items that other districts have had for a long time. And he does look over everything that comes in the office, and nothing goes in and out of there that he doesn't see. And I'm just glad that I've been able to work with him for 4 years.
Jennifer?
Same with Senator Puckett. He's a very unique man. He's just got a heart of gold, and he really is in it for his constituents and for the people in our district. He bends over backwards and works morning until late at night sometimes to try to make sure that they're taken care of and have the best possible.
I really thank both of you for being on this segment of This Week in Richmond, and we hope that constituents will, excuse me, will not catch a cold during the session. and we hope that they too will find the time to get acquainted with their legislators.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank
Thanks
you
for
both.
having us.
Thank you
Thank you.
both very much.
Thanks for all you do too.
Thank you. Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and a very special welcome to Delegate Joe Yost, Giles County, Virginia, the western part of the state. I'm holding in my hand, Delegate Yost, the front page of the Richmond Times-Dispatch a couple of Sundays ago, in which it has on there a delegate from the western part of the state making not only the front page, but a picture and above the fold,
That's
as
right.
they say. And it's all because of the mental health issues, the psychiatric issues. We'll let our viewers know that this is the first time they'll be hearing about mental health issues. There'll be some other times we'll get you and we'll make the room crowded and get some other colleagues in. But help our viewers get a sense of the bills you're introducing, and then others perhaps that you hear of your colleagues introducing that will seek to change the mental health laws in Virginia.
Well, thanks, David. Thanks for having me on the show this week. I think, one thing to talk about before we wade down into the details of the bills themselves, the bills that I've introduced, some of them are new, some of them are ones that have carried in previous years. As you're probably well aware, and most of my colleagues, and I think everybody in Richmond, mental health issues are one of the main areas of my concern that I had during my first term in the House, and I'm going to continue into the second term, and as long as I'm here, really. To me, it's a very important issue. I think folks often don't realize, 25% of the population has some diagnosable form of a mental health problem. We're not talking about, everybody has schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. We're talking about the entire spectrum, from obsessive compulsive disorder, generalized anxiety, minor depression, all the way up to schizophrenia, major depression. And so everybody knows somebody with a mental health problem, whether it's a friend, a loved one, and so it does touch everybody. And to me, that's why these issues are so important. The bills that I've introduced, two of them stemmed from something that occurred in the Commonwealth on November 19th with Senator Deeds and his family. These are things that we've looked at. We talked to the Virginia Association of Community Services Boards about them. There are also recommendations that came out of the governor's office and from Secretary Hazel. But then the other bill that I introduced is something that I've carried over from last year that did not get much traction because of some fiscal concerns, but has been recommended previously by various commissions and inspector generals and everybody on down the line.
So the first two that you had mentioned, having to do with extending the time that someone can be held, or?
Yeah, House Bill 242 and 243 are sort of the ones that relate to what happened on November 19th. 242 is about providing for an additional 2-hour extension of the emergency custody order or ECO process. Right now in Virginia, when an ECO is issued, law enforcement and mental health service providers have up to 4 hours to evaluate that person, determine whether a temporary detention order or a TDO needs to be issued, and then find a bed for that individual. Once the 4 hours is up, if they still need more time, they can apply for an additional 2 hours. And so in Virginia currently, you have up to 6 hours to go through this entire process. What we're asking for is the option to provide for an additional 2-hour extension, therefore giving it an 8-hour process. And then the second bill allows for a temporary detention order or TDO to go ahead and be issued, even though a bed might not have been found, with the good faith that the CSP personnel will continue searching for that bed.
So would that permit someone then to be, conceivably if it passes, it's being introduced, to be detained in some other facility until a bed's available?
They would continue to be held wherever they were at that point in time. A lot of what takes place during these evaluation processes, they can take place in either police departments, hospitals, crisis assessment centers that we've been building in Virginia for the last 3 years. And so they would continue to be held there until that bed would be found.
Okay. And what about that other bill that you've introduced?
The third bill deals with the actual TDO process itself. Once an individual is issued a TDO and is held, can be held in Virginia for up to 48 hours unless that TDO was issued on a Friday or a weekend that has a holiday on a Monday. Once the 48-hour window is up, a civil commitment hearing is had where it's determined whether they would be either involuntarily committed and continue to be held, voluntarily commit themselves, or they can be released. What we are proposing is to increase that from 48 hours to 72 hours and then to put a minimum of 24 hours on that piece. This is something that was recommended by the Virginia Tech Review Panel, by the Mental Health Law Reform Commission, and a couple other agencies. The Mental Health Task Force that I was on last year regarding school and campus safety was a recommendation out of them. And what we're trying to do is provide more time for individuals to get the needed treatment.
Now, I understand the introduced budget from former Governor McDonnell did include some additional monies in the mental health area. Have you found any that would help in any of the fiscal impact on this legislation?
But really, the only one that has a fiscal impact is the TDO bill extending 48 to 72 hours.
Yes.
Last year, Department of Planning and Budget estimated that had about a $1.2 million fiscal impact, and the governor's outgoing budget, he put in $1.3 million for us to help cover that cost. And so we feel much more confident this year moving forward with that legislation.
Well, that seems like the financial part then should be resolved from that money being in the budget as long as it stays there. And certainly with that issue being high profile, the whole mental health issues, then the money should stay. What bills, as you've been talking with your colleagues, some may have bills identical to what you've introduced, but what else do you see on the horizon that's been introduced?
Well, I think, not only this year, but as we move forward, mental health is going to continue to be a topic of conversation for my colleagues and I. I think if you talk to a lot of leaders, particularly in the executive branch, they recognize that we spent a lot of time over the last 4 years working on our intellectual disabilities and developmental disability systems in Virginia because of the Department of Justice lawsuit and the settlement. And now that they've got all that mostly squared away, I think there will be a push to really focus in on the mental health and substance abuse system in the Commonwealth. As far as this session goes, I know a lot of my colleagues have bills that are either identical to some of the ones that I have proposed, or ones that have either longer time frames or shorter time frames. I know there's one that has for a 24-hour period on an ECO. There's others that have the 2 hours. There's several of the TDO bills. There's a couple bills for studies on Virginia's mental health system and create a more permanent type of committee or commission that would be in Virginia for the long term to study the mental health system, as opposed to a commission that's created through an executive order like the governor had. So I think not only this session, but moving forward, this will continue to be a very hot topic of conversation.
Well, certainly I think in the legislative session, by all indications, prior to convening and now that the session has started, that mental health, ethics reform, health care, of course the budget, are really going to be the hot issues that you'll be wrestling with. And perhaps on the mental health one, there may be one where there's more consensus even on the others.
Yeah, I think, as you move forward, I think it sort of swings back around to what we talked about earlier. Everybody knows somebody with a mental health problem, whether they know it or not. And one of the things that I've learned, talking to my colleagues, or even when I go grocery shopping back home in the district, that is probably the single most thing that anybody ever says to me. Is they'll come to me and say, I've got a brother or sister or a close friend who committed suicide or has depression or has bipolar disorder, and I really appreciate what you're doing. And so I think, now that it has hit really close to home for a lot of us who might not have recognized it before, it will continue to be a hot topic.
Some of the issues that you wrestled with in your first term and will continue to wrestle with, while you might wonder, would passing this make something preventable or is it curable? But I think when you look at the mental health issues, that certainly there can be things done that are both preventable and can really help someone who's suffering from those disorders.
Yeah, and I think, when I talk to folks, I think there's a micro and a macro way of looking at this. I think the legislative proposals that I have put out there are sort of the micro thing. I don't know whether they would have prevented what happened on November 19th or April 16th or anywhere else. but at least it's something. But one thing that I like to convey to individuals is that if we pass these and they aren't acting the law, they are not silver bullet cures. We really have to continue pushing forward and getting more money for services, because I think that's going to be one of the single biggest factors. Is if you have a great access to service for individuals, for their families, that's really going to go a long way in hopefully preventing future tragedies.
Well, each of the 140 legislators has some areas of specialty back home that they work on. That certainly this one is a natural one for you because of your interest and involvement in mental health issues.
I agree. It's an issue that I've been pushing really since I was at grad school at Radford University. I've been involved in.
And that hasn't been that long ago.
No, actually it hasn't. Sometimes it's good being the youngest member in the entire General Assembly, but
Now, I'm not sure if our viewers heard that. Say it again.
I said sometimes it's good being the youngest member.
The youngest member.
That's right. But I think every issue needs a voice, and this is something where I've really enjoyed putting my voice forward.
That's good. That is good. Well, what about other issues now that you see that are on the horizon? Let's have some conversation about some of those. I'll lay out several, and you pick what you'd like to talk with our viewers about. Ethics reform, health care reform, particularly health care reform that could involve Virginia receiving federal money. That's a hot issue. SOL reforms. Those, I believe, and most, whether you were going by surveys or whatever, would be among some of the biggest subjects.
Well, I think it's interesting that you bring up SOL reform. Being the youngest member does have its advantages from time to time. Being 27, I actually took an SOL test, which is something that I don't think that maybe two of my other colleagues could say. Two of the younger guys that are just a year or two older than me. But it was my class that SOLs actually had to count, so we had to pass them before you could move or graduate.
Yes.
And as I look at the environment for SOL testing, I think they were put out there with the best intentions. It was all about making sure our students are learning what they need to learn to progress into the future, and I think that's a very noble goal that we should all aspire to. But I think where we are today is, between 3rd grade and 12th grade, students can have to take at least 34 tests. I think you can take up to 39 or 40 depending on if you enroll in those classes or not. That's a lot of tests. We're asking 3rd graders to learn about ancient Roman and ancient Chinese and ancient Greek history. I can tell you when I was in 3rd grade, I was probably finger painting or doing something that had nothing to do with ancient history like that. But, not only the impact on our students, but when you talk to teachers, they're having to teach to the test now. You go into a classroom, I visit all my schools, try to twice a year in the district, and the first thing I notice when you walk in the room is there's daily objectives on the board. There's usually 3 or 4, and they have to go through those objectives every day because they have a drop-dead deadline they have to meet, in the 1st or 2nd week in May for the SOL test. As SOL tests get closer, one of the things I noticed last year, kids are complaining of stomach aches and headaches, and they don't want to go to school. They're tired. They're stressed out. They're 3rd grade, and they're stressed out like they were in college. And so, I think we really need to examine the number of tests that students are taking, but we also need to examine the content because right now it's all multiple choice testing. I feel if you talk to some of the admissions counselors at our state universities, or if you talk to employers or even the chamber, I think there's a general feeling that students are losing the ability to think critically, which is obviously a very important skill in the job world and moving into college. So I think this is a serious issue that we need to look at, and I feel confident that this is one of those issues where there's, like mental health, a lot of bipartisan consensus around it, and we're likely to see some changes coming into session.
Now, not being of that generation that took the SOL test, I wonder your opinion. If you had to take the same SOL test today, would it be testing things that the one you took that you had to pass before you graduated, would it be the kind of things that you continue to know, or was it, as you reflect on it, was it kind of preparing for the test and now you passed the test?
As I look back, some of it, I would say things that I needed to know, but I don't think I've used chemistry since I've left high school. And so there was a lot of preparatory work for the test. I didn't use a whole lot of history until I actually started back in the General Assembly, where you're sort of surrounded by history and you talk to a lot of classes all the time. So I think it was probably a mixture of both.
Well, I'm certainly not suggesting it, or I might get in trouble with 130 some of your colleagues, but it might be interesting if all the legislators took an SOL test. So we'll leave it at that, but thank you for highlighting the mental health issues and for reflecting on the SOLs, and we look forward to having you back again, Delegate Yost.
Thank you. My pleasure.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. Haley Buick GMC, the place for a new Verano or Terrain Denali, in Richmond and online at haleybuickgmc.com. Everywhere there are lighting poles, there's one more opportunity to save money. Intelligent Illuminations provides cost-effective wireless lighting solutions for roadway or area outdoor lights. Kanawha Valley Arena, Virginia's cowboy town, hosting an array of events from Civil War reenactments to diesel truck pulls. More information online at virginiarodeo.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. So what do you do? Information about getting involved in advanced technology careers, making everything from clean energy to life-saving medicine, is available at dreamitdoitvirginia.com. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.